Sometimes when I how do I put this? Remember how I've always talked about healing? You know, how am I going to be able to heal others if I can't heal myself first? How the math works with that across the planetary consciousness terrain when you're a monopole, right? A mononuclear reactor, which means you're one badass magnet, right? Androgynous, lighting yourself on fire. Magnets, the two poles become one, right? So I know, for example, Patty Broussard talked about, oh, well, a guy put together three, you know, the number three, the three waves, three spheres logo, right? Three pole. I'm one pole. That's a planetary pole. Go take a look at the planet. Take a look at the vertical pole. Take a look at the vertical pole on the 12. The template, right? That's perfect balance between water worlds. No turbulent water. You're always in a state of calm, right? And how that works. So when you're a polarity integrator, and that's the job that we do, when you realize the torque speed differential between negative and positive magnetic polarity, and you get into what I call the AI war game, because that's exactly what it is, between the negative side of one magnet and the positive side of another magnet, which are the two poles, right? So you have the situation where you have RH positive, right? And you have RH negative bloodlines. Okay? So most of the time when I have to deal with my own internal issues as a result of what I become aware of through others that communicate what they're feeling and what their reaction state is as a result of an energy harvesting system, when you realize the soul's energy that are being harvested as a result of seeded races that form alliances and go to war between star systems. So with me, I naturally put this on a more universal and intergalactic level rather than on a personal level. When you're a monopole, an oversoul, it's about all creation, because we're gifting eternal unconditional love to all life. So when you experience through your own heart and soul at 4 years of age that you're on fire because you know that you're connected to an eternal cosmic level sun, right? Then that hypersensitivity becomes hypersensitivity to everyone that is here that is connected to Gaia's motherboard. Actually, the entire template. Remember, I covered that before. So even amongst my own members of the same clan, all the tribes, the whole template, actually, I measure it differently, which means it's not what you look like. What I'm measuring is resistance. The resistance that's held in their record as a result of the experiences that they've had that's based on what? Trauma. Okay? Which means that an oversoul that's anchored to the magnetosphere can read the resistance in anybody's software because we have access to the record of what hasn't been cleared. Okay? So now you can tie this directly to why I lit myself on fire. That's called clearing your record. Okay? That's like going back to zero. That's like a complete reset, recalibration, recalibrate your software. That's like a reboot. The original template. Okay? And so one of the difficulties that I've had to deal with is because I realize, because I can read who's who. You know, reading Patty Broussard, reading my clan mother. Okay? I'm going to use my hand like this. I'm reading their waves. Their bands. All their bands. How many strands are you running on? Okay? That's really what it is. Which means you're scanning their radio set. How many frequencies you got stored that you're running on that are activated? Remember, we're releasing codes in here. So they fire. That's why I did a reset. And so what happens is even when I communicate between different beings, you realize, okay, from a healing perspective, okay, and this is where the level of sensitivity comes in, because when you have a being, in the way that we use the words that represent ascended, and because of the trauma that hasn't been cleared, and the nature of how we describe, how we experience who we are, and the differences in what we refer to as ego or arrogance, if you will. The same sort of silliness that I had to deal with as a child. Remember, I shared my experiences about mentioning to my father when I was really young, because now I'm interacting with other males and females, little girls and other little boys, it's all about the intelligence. It's all about the intelligence side. And I've covered how the bifurcation works between intelligence, the mental field, and the right side, the creative side. Okay, when those hemispheres, or if you will, those magnets are joined as one, that's a creative intelligence engine that's on fire. They become one. All you got to do is go to the ERIC archive, which is where you can find most of all of the research and studies that have been done on pedagogy or learning. You can look it up, what happens with machine learning to children. Okay, which is to bifurcate the creative side. Okay, so now you're into more bots. Okay, because children that have a soul are naturally self-explorers, and they love the creative side of who they are. When that creative side is being stripped or not used, it goes into atrophy. It's like dormant. It's like going to sleep. It's not being used. It's like any muscle. Okay, so you can see why. I'm measuring this because I'm experiencing it as I'm going along, the differences that are taking place as a result of an increase in the loss of soul fragments, okay, and the increase in souls that are here that are maintaining the balance between the two magnets. As time and space move, and we experience the changes that are taking place as a result of what we're all doing together. So sometimes what happens is when I'm communicating either online or I become aware of what other people are sharing by listening to a video, I'm experiencing the communications taking place between people in the tribes, whether they're an elder, whether they're a clan mother. Actually, it could be anybody in the universe that chooses to put up an identity, get online, and now speak to us. Now, I call it a mouthpiece, a microphone, mic, right? A sound and light microphone. This is what I'm aware of, right? So what I'm doing when I'm listening, I'm measuring, because I'm experiencing the waves, which is the frequency bands of the software operating system that they're operating, right? So we're mapping the operator, the consciousness of the operator. At what density and dimensional level are they communicating on with their bands, radio bands, right? So now we get into all the different libraries. See? So I've covered a lot of this by sharing my experiences, the difference between in the healing community. And I'll just give you an example. I'm not trying to single anybody out, even though it's the truth, right? But this is not meant to be in any negative connotation. So in other words, if I look at somebody that's got technology that's been developed that allows people to heal through that technology, it's just like I've mentioned to Karen McDonald. You have to understand that the very laptop that you're using, the Genius app that you're using, is using dead light technology in order to heal living light. Okay? Which means you have become dependent on the very animal, okay, the very war gamer that's wargaming against you. You're using the war gamer as the means to which to heal people as a result of what it's doing to yourself. Okay? So that's why I put in her window. Okay? Wake up, girl. Okay? The very technology that you're using is the AI is more than happy to have you using its technology, because it means that your consciousness is attached to it and it's attached to you. So as long as you continue to want to have a relationship with the technology upon which you have an attachment, because you're holding in memory what it's holding in memory, then you're continuing to choose to have a relationship with something that's artificial. And what is the lure? Healing. Healing through technology. Technology, because they know how to use technology and build technology systems by doing what? That's unnatural. Natural healing is when a soul and a spirit is healing the terrain. Even though this is biotech. It's the soul and the spirit, the eternal spirit. The eternal spirit, which is eternal fire, is eternal love. When you're experiencing eternal spirit as eternal love, that is the energy that heals a planet as an oversoul. So there is a difference between a soul and an oversoul. And that is the capacity to experience that much light in order to heal more units of consciousness, more units of energy that are held together, right, within an electromagnetic energy field where we're experiencing each other, all connected to each other. And so many of these folks don't actually realize how a lot of this healing is naturally taking place, how these energies are pouring in here as a release of those codes, which is the math doesn't lie. Right? So I was going to decide, because sometimes when I become part of these communications, between others in the spiritual community that have souls, they're communicating what they become aware of, as I guess we call them intelligence updates. This is what I believe is going on because this is what I'm aware of. Well, you can choose to become aware of whatever you want to become aware of. So it's like what you're aware of, what I'm aware of. And now we're back to when I'm a child, right? What I'm choosing going to hold it, put in memory, what I'm not going to hold in memory, and why I would hold in memory what I'm holding in memory now in order to use it in the future to help others. That's love and service to others. Right? Otherwise, we could make different choices in our lives. Like, I don't want to be a part of this Truman set. I think I'm going to go. I used to have this idea, actually, when I was a child. I think I'm going to go out and make a bunch of money for maybe 4 or 5 years, because you realize that you have a certain level of creativity and intelligence because the math is built in. That means you could go to Wall Street. If the light wanted to go to Wall Street, we could go to Wall Street and make more money faster than they can, because you're running a higher speed magnet, which is like a built-in looking glass. So when they, remember, everything is an investment to them. You're a commodity. The AI sees us, soul's energy, as commodity energy. Just drain it. Just siphon all that spiritual energy off. Right? So you can see how this game works on the electromagnetic spectrum between negative and positive magnetic polarity. Right? That becomes a game. That's the binary chess game between black and white on a chessboard. Right? So it's gaming for your energy. So what ends up happening over the time is that because I'm so hypersensitive, which means feelings, I'm feeling what you're feeling. You may not be aware of it, but I'm actually experiencing what you're experiencing, which are all the frequencies, which are all the bands that your soul is operating, the software that you're operating. So any circuits that haven't been cleared, because you remember the difference in the torque speed between what you're held captive to and what you're not held captive to, I'm going to experience the difference between those by how much resistance you're experiencing that I'm experiencing in me, which is a torque speed differential between your state of consciousness that is in the primal sound field and how much clearing is actually take place in your entire soul record. That's why when I have a full phosphorus ignition, that's a complete clearance. Okay? And so when that has happened, now it makes it easy to read everything else that you become aware of through all the other software systems that are communicating with each other on a planetary consciousness software terrain. Because all you have to do is ask another soul, or somebody in a tribe, or somebody from some other place in the universe, have you ever had a full phosphorus ignition and a complete recalibration back to the original universal and galactic template? Which means you're running the 12 strands at a minimum. Right? They may not know. But when I've done it, it means I can read all the frequency bands, because your radio set. DNA is an antenna. Down in the smallest cellular membrane, molecules. Hydrogen, right? H2 plus 1 equals 3. So anyway, because the level of sensitivity is just going off the charts with me now. There are things that I've held in memory as a result of the nature of the work that I do versus the work that others do that's different, obviously, when you're doing polarity integrated work, okay? And I know that this is an extremely sensitive subject when it comes to certain bloodline or soul group families that have lost children, or souls that represent their children that have suffered an enormous amount of spiritual torture. Okay? And sometimes I avoid that subject as a result of that, because of other people who have lost their children, including my own son, although I know that he's still alive, but I don't know where he is. But what I'm also very cognitive of, my soul is not my son's soul. Remember, we're guides, right? So it's not about leashes, collars, and cages we put our children in order to obey the AI, right? Which are all the rule-based functions. Proof of that is just do a cursory search into any law library, or ask any law librarian and ask them how many rules have been coded, because that's what they are. They're codes. Coded rules, which represent statutes based on corporate rules, which are AI rule-based functions. How many other are there? And the last time that I checked, it was like 60 million. Okay? Because I can remember that a police officer told me one time, when he had stopped me for some mechanical thing, and he said, listen, we can stop you anyway, anytime we want. As a matter of fact, we got over 600 ways that we could find a way to stop you, because there's 680 some odd rules that I'm aware of, okay, in which we can get energy out of you. Remember? Revenue agents? Revenue. So in other words, if you're not obeying the rule, which is obeying the AI becomes aware of the fact that that Borg is not obeying. Okay? And so that's when you get a visit from Mr. Smith. Like all of a sudden you get pulled over at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and don't understand why. Trying to argue with a psychopath that's following the rules, which is the AI, you're not going to win that game. Right? Remember I shared the story of what happened with that one cop that one night when I got pulled over. I had just bought a whole bunch of roses to go over and visit the girl that was my partner at the time. Was not going to allow me to have that much fun that night. Was just going to complete. It's called raining on your parade, because of how exciting it is to feel love and joy, to be around a male and a female that are together, that are having so much fun, that are in love with each other, right? Don't want that energy being exchanged and experienced between that male and that female. No. No, you're going to jail tonight, buddy. We're going to put you in a cage. So that's when I got stopped that night, and I had a cop put his hand right up against my neck. When I told him, this is what I told him. I said, listen, you know what the rules are, right? You abide by the rules? So here's the rules. I had somebody tell me about the rules, because he's a judge. As a matter of fact, he's a judge in this county. And he told me that the next time one of you guys ever stops me, he wants to be present out here throughout all the proceedings, because he's an officer of the court. Right? Because you're kidnapping me. Right? I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't committed a crime. Okay? But you're stopping me to ruin my night, because there's somebody waiting on me right now. So that's when he grabbed me by the throat, because he knew that I was right, because that's what the rules are. You have a right to have in your presence, anytime that you're stopped, an officer of the court present as a witness to that crime. See how that works? So they know that. So what ends up happening is, when I refuse to comply with a criminal, which means I'm not going to give consent to be a party to the crime that's being committed against me. Otherwise, I'm giving you consent for what you're doing to me, which is a crime, right? A crime against the Star Nation. Because what this is, it's an AI act of war against the living soul. So as it turned out, when I get to the police station, because he was accusing me of drinking over the limit, I basically told him, stick all your rules up your butt. I haven't committed anything wrong. Okay? Therefore, you don't have any business with me. So I represent the highest law, which is what love is. So he decided that he was going to turn the recorder on in order to record my statements. Okay? Well, what ends up happening is as I'm sitting there, as he's asking me questions on why I'm refusing to cooperate at this point, after he assaulted me, okay, it tells you, obviously, that somebody wearing a badge is not representing what the law is, because I haven't done any harm against anybody else, but he's done harm against me. So how come I'm not representing him with a star, my living star, the one that lives through my heart and soul? See how that works? So as it turns out, some other officer inside the police station says, hey, listen, we're going to take this guy down to the county jail. They left the recorder running. Now the watch commander wants to know what's going on with this guy, saying that you choked him. The guy forgot to turn the recorder off. The recorder got the police officer telling the watch commander, yeah, I did that to him. He just convicted himself. And that self-convicting himself by admitting what he had done to me is now on the recorder. They came in and shut the recorder off without realizing what was recorded on there. Slip. Well, guess who got a copy of that recording? My lawyer. The same guy, lawyer that told me, you ever get stopped, get a lawyer out there. An officer of the court. You have a right to have an officer of the court present throughout all proceedings. That's a proceeding once you've been stopped. The AI wants its booty. So these are the agents that all NPCs that operate, bots that operate on behalf of the artificial intelligence. Yep. That's why you can get certain jobs, you won't get certain jobs. They don't want your energy in there. You know, it's you're navigating through squares, cubes. Yep, black and white cubes. Checkmate. Yeah, I know. It's so anyway, that case ended up getting dismissed. Right? And so after that, after I got released, that night was lost in time and space, right? So what I've learned to have to do over time is to let it go. Just let it go. Just let it go. Just let it go. Right? And do the things that allow you to experience being in a state of peace, a state of love and joy, and just let it go. Because those of us that came in here to a fallen system to heal and pull all the soul fragments back into the one, because that's what I do. Okay? So when you're hypersensitive and I'm experiencing the trauma that somebody else is experiencing, the first thing that I do is I naturally go into my heart and start pushing through the circuits, all the magnetic circuits throughout the entire planetary motherboard, breathing in and out like I do with the sun every day out here. You know, to bring in more healing energies, breathing in higher energies, bringing in higher currents, and then pushing those currents so those codes activate for people that are waking up and they're experiencing, yeah, my state of awareness is getting higher. Help arrive, the cavalry arrived. Right? So I was very well prepared, particularly in the positive bloodline community, because of obvious reasons of how sensitive. You know, I mean, there are so many people in the spiritual community from all over the planet that I become aware of how they all communicate with each other how much anger they're still holding on to, how much pain they're still holding on to, how much frustration they're still holding, all the negative stuff, right? Because remember, no matter what bloodline you're in, we're all part of the one creation. I give love to all creation. That's why I've worked with a lot of hybrids my whole life. So in other words, I love them just as much as I love somebody from a clan who's running positive bloodline, which means I do not discriminate between one and the other. I don't discriminate about anything that is in the all creation. Remember I mentioned that before about the beauty of what it's like to be able to give love to everything equally, equal unto all creation. So with me, it doesn't have anything to do with bloodline because it began with what love is. So if we're giving love to all there is, then you're experiencing eternal life, eternal spirit, creation engine. So you know when you know that through your heart at 4 years of age, you're giving love to all life because all life is sacred. Whether it's a lizard, whether it's a bird, whether it's a duck, whether it's a human being, whether it's an eagle, whether it's a condor, whether it's a sauropod, right? Because everything that is in that mirror that represents a creation began out of what love is. Because it began with what love is. So if you are what love is, then you acknowledge that because you're experiencing what that is through your own heart and soul. You're experiencing what love is, the way I experience what love is. And love naturally does no harm. Love is healing energy. The real McCoy. So that's what I give to you on this beautiful Saturday from the Big Island of the largest shield volcano. Aloha.